My father did not clear his throat. He simply pushed a polished folder across the table and spoke my sister's name like a promise. Lena had been home for 7 days. I had carried my parents for 10 years. My mother's nod was the loudest sound in the room. I did not argue. I did not blink. I placed the power of attorney beside the house keys, the metal clinking sharp enough to cut the silence. To them, it looked like surrender. But Lena did not read my letter twice. She couldn't. I grew up in hallways that smelled of antiseptic and lavender, lights humming overhead. My father walked ahead with long, confident strides. I trailed behind, pushing a wheelchair I was too small for, standing on my toes to keep it straight. "Careful, Kara," he'd say, before turning back to the person he wished to impress. Lena did not trail. She floated, in dresses that swayed, with laughter that pulled eyes like gravity. My mother posed her in doorways, in photos where I sometimes appeared in the background, holding a clipboard, wiping a spill only I noticed. Lena got the dance shoes, the summer camps, the weekend trips, to unlock her potential. I got responsibility. Kara's independent, my parents told everyone, as if independence were a trait I was born with, not something I was carved into. When Lena complained about homework, they hired a tutor. When I brought home straight A's, my father nodded without looking up. "Expected from you." There was a birthday I remember. Lena's had sparklers and a crowd. Mine, 2 months later, was a leaning sheet cake on the kitchen counter. My mother kissed my cheek and reminded me to grab my uniform for my evening shift at the facility. I was 16. The shift wasn't required. The mortgage was. I didn't resent Lena. She wasn't the one who made the rules. She simply thrived within them. But I learned early that wanting anything made me inconvenient. So I stopped wanting. By the time I was an adult, the pattern had hardened. Lena left for the city to chase a creative dream, a dream my parents spoke of with reverence. When she called, it was usually for money. They always sent it. Meanwhile, my father fell ill. Then my mother. The business faltered. Staff left. Regulations tightened. And the person they turned to was not the daughter they'd invested in. It was me. I signed the power of attorney on a vinyl hospital chair at 2 a.m., my mother whispering, "You're good with the serious things." It wasn't a compliment. It was a sentence. Some nights, I'd catch my reflection in the facility's glass doors, posture straight, hair tied back, tablet in hand. I didn't look like someone in her 20s. I looked like someone who had already lived a life. Lena was the face. I was the scaffolding. The shift came quietly. First, an email chain about inspections arrived without my name. Then a meeting about succession planning, one I only heard about because a nurse asked why I wasn't presenting. I was in the supply room, holding a box of wound dressings, when my phone buzzed. A photo from my mother, Lena standing in front of the facility sign, smiling, hair lifted by the wind. The caption, "Future Leadership." That evening, I walked into the kitchen. My father was speaking softly to Lena about a vision and the next decade. When he noticed me, he offered a distracted smile. "Kara, don't worry about the administrative stuff. You've done enough heavy lifting. It's time for Lena to take on bigger responsibilities." Bigger. The word hung in the air. My mother touched my wrist. "You're good with the behind-the-scenes things. Let her shine." Later, I found a folder on the dining table. Financial projections in Lena's handwriting, numbers inaccurate, proposals impossible. My parents had already signed their initials in the corner. I didn't react. I didn't argue. I closed the folder, placed it back exactly where I found it, and walked upstairs. Each step felt steady, almost weightless. In my room, I opened a blank document. No headings, no emotion, just space. Then I began. The first entry was a timeline, 10 years condensed into bullet points, medical emergencies, regulatory freezes, staffing shortages, the year we almost lost Medicaid support. Every crisis I stepped into because no one else knew how. The second was structural, licenses, compliance standards, vendor contracts, hospital partnerships. I listed every person who relied on the system, not the property, to function. I didn't need to build a case. The case already existed. All I had to do was assemble it. The next morning, before sunrise, I drove to Dr. Hale's office. He read my notes in silence, then looked at me over his glasses. "They're moving without you." I nodded. "And you're done asking to be seen?" Another nod. "You don't need revenge," he said. "You need structure." That afternoon, he called Ms. Rowan. She arrived with a leather portfolio and a calm that came from decades of navigating systems people underestimated. She pointed at the licenses. "This is the real spine. Without it, the facilities are just buildings." She tapped the compliance protocols I'd written. "This is intellectual property. You created it." Then she held up the summary of our partnerships. "This is institutional capital. It follows the system, not the name." We spent the next week building a legal framework, a non-profit foundation designed to hold everything intangible: the brand, the protocols, the data system, the partnerships. Not to own, but to safeguard. A structure that served the people in our care, not a family's image. Harbor Bridge Foundation. I chose the name quietly. A bridge built for those who needed steadiness. Under my authority as power of attorney, still fully valid, I executed each transfer with the precision of someone copying medication doses. My parents, believing it was routine administrative cleanup, signed honorary advisory roles without reading the fine print. No ownership. No control. Just a name on a letterhead. When the work was done, I returned to operations as if nothing had changed. Lena drifted through rooms with a notebook, offering color palette ideas for the website. My parents beamed every time she spoke. The night before the legacy celebration, I wrote Lena a letter. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sharp. It was clarity. I explained what she was inheriting: a shell without the system, responsibility without preparation, a title without the backbone. I ended with one line. "What you carry next depends on what you choose to hold." On the day of the celebration, I placed 3 items into my bag: the keys, the power of attorney, and the red envelope holding the letter. 3 objects. 3 truths. The room was warm, soft lights, crystal glasses, linen napkins folded like small wishes. My father tapped his spoon against a plate. "Thank you all for being here. We honor the future of our family's work." He turned to Lena. "She's ready to lead." My mother nodded. "She deserves it." I waited until the applause faded. Then I stood, not abruptly, not with force, just enough for the room to still. I placed the keys, the document, and the red envelope on the table. My father frowned. "Kara, this isn't necessary." I slid the keys toward Lena. "It's all yours." She reached for the envelope first. Her eyes skimmed the lines, then sharpened. She flipped the page. Her breath caught. "What is this?" No one answered. She stood, her chair scraping back. "This can't be right." My father grabbed the papers. His face drained as he read: the transfers, the licenses, the operational rights, all under Harbor Bridge Foundation. "Kara, what did you do?" In the corner, Mr. Hayes, the foundation's attorney, rose. His voice was calm. "Everything in that packet is accurate. The transfers were executed legally, with your signatures, during the period when Miss Kara Hart held full authority to act on your behalf." Lena's voice was thin. "So what did they just give me?" Hayes folded his hands. 2 aging properties and the debt tied to them. Anything more requires certification from Harbor Bridge, contingent upon meeting the care standards Ms. Hart designed. My father's voice sank to a whisper. "So we have nothing." I didn't correct him. They had exactly what they valued: appearance without structure. Lena sank back into her seat, the confident posture she'd carried all evening dissolved. I thought I was taking over something real. I finally spoke. You were the system, the responsibility, the work. You just never saw it. I stepped back from the table and left the room. The system would speak from here. That night, the house was quiet in a way I'd never known. No alerts from staff. No calls about medication errors. The silence felt unfamiliar, like stepping into a room I didn't realize existed. By morning, the consequences had already begun to unfold: bank emails, staff resignations, compliance notices. None of it came to me. It all went exactly where the responsibility had been placed. I drove to the new Harbor Bridge Center before sunrise. Inside, volunteers were setting up morning activities. Someone was tuning a piano. The notes drifted through the hallway like a quiet reminder that life continued even when families didn't. I walked into my office, small, plain, softened by the morning light. I set down my keys and exhaled slowly, the breath dropping into the space like a final weight being released. A month later, during a site visit, I saw Lena in one of the Allied facilities, pushing a resident's wheelchair. Her movements were small, careful. She didn't see me. I let her have the moment. Some stories end with victory. Mine ended with space, clean, quiet, earned. For the first time, I wasn't carrying anything that wasn't mine. In the end, there was no drama. No shouting, no slammed doors. Families fracture loudly, but boundaries settle like dust, soft, inevitable, impossible to sweep away once you stop pretending you're the one holding everything up. Freedom didn't come from winning. It came from stepping aside without looking back. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. And sometimes the silence that follows is the only truth that ever mattered.